Good afternoon, everyone. I want to welcome you to the March webinar for this month. My name is Julia Van Buren. I am the Education Trustee for SILA, and we're very excited this month to have Linda McHenry with us. Many of you probably know Linda. She has been in the industry for many years, and she has been teaching. She did work as an agent, but she has also been teaching for most of the past several years. And she has done many of the webinars for us since probably for the past 2 years. So we are very excited to have her with us. And today she will be teaching on ethics. And she has a real fun way of putting that together. So I think you're really going to enjoy it today. We have only 1 hour. So please make sure you put your questions in the chat and we will address them. And I believe we'll have a little bit of time left over today for questions. So please make sure you put everything in the chat and we will get to those. Another thing you need to remember that this webinar is being recorded and it will be available on the Foundation webinar library with sometime next week. A link to the recording along with the PowerPoint slides will be included in your post-webinar survey communication that you will be receiving. With that, I'm going to immediately pass it over to Linda.
Thanks so much. I really appreciate this opportunity. It's always fun to do these webinars with SILA and with you folks. So for those of you who've been with us before, thanks for coming back. I'm going to talk about ethics, just some things that I think are interesting. Going to try to take ethics just generally and then apply that to us in the insurance industry, because we don't just start working in the insurance industry and develop ethics just then. Okay, we come with them. And throughout the webinar, if you have any questions, feel free to, again, type them in your chat. Anything that I don't get the opportunity to answer during the presentation, I will answer at the end. We have a Q&A, and we do want to let everybody know that you are supposed to have your webcams off. So if you can, when you join, okay, if you would please make sure that your videos are off. I guess we've got a couple of people here who don't realize that. So again, if you make sure that your microphones are muted and your webcams are off, that would be really good. So you can see the things we're going to talk about first. And I think that the basis or the foundation or the heart of ethics has to do with behavior. All right. It isn't what we think, it isn't what we feel, it isn't what we plan to do or what we might do. It's actually what we do. All right. So it's something that we do deliberately, we plan it, we know we're going to do it, we're aware, okay, of what we're doing. And for conduct to be considered ethical, we have to intend for it to be good or right. And we have to be focusing on other people rather than ourselves. We can't just be focusing on us, because if we're focusing on us, then again, we're kind of avoiding the whole concept of what ethics is in the insurance industry. All right. And I'm going to talk about that. So let's talk about what we do ourselves. All right. Think about yourself and your ethical rule book. Most of us don't have it written down. All right. It's one of those things that a lot of times we just do by feel, especially if we've been in the insurance industry for a long time. So I think the heart of ethics has to do with what we think is right and wrong, what we think is good or bad, what we think is legal and illegal, right? Because a lot of people think, well, gee, if it's legal, it's okay. And if it's illegal, it's not. Well, think about this. Society has rules, society enacts laws, and most of the laws are there because they're enforcement. Something happened in the past that wasn't good or right, and the majority of people didn't like it, so they pass laws. Think about speeding. We all know that if the speed limit is posted 65, we're not supposed to drive faster than 65, right? That's what the law is. And if we put our cruise control on 70 and say, well, gee, no one's going to stop me, this isn't wrong. Okay, I get there faster. Ethically and legally it is, because the rule is this and society says you're supposed to follow the rules. But, you know, the absolute is that is wrong. But from a situational standpoint, people think, okay, there's no one on the road. I'm only going 5 miles an hour. What's the big deal? And I think each of us in certain circumstances understands the absolute, understands the black and white, right and wrong. Okay. But also views that there's gray and there's situations. And I think that's the most challenging thing about ethics, whether it's in the insurance industry or it's any other way, is that every situation is different. And as much as we want things to be black and white, they're not always. And I'm going to talk more on this later, but I want you to just think about it and think about the rules and who has to follow them and who doesn't and why we do and why we don't. So that's one part, I think, of the heart of ethics. And then the next thing has to do, again, with society and consensus, because we have society. It's made of all kinds of people, different ages, different cultures. I mean, we have the global ethics, we have ethics in our country, you have ethics in a business industry, you have ethics in your family. How many of us had a best friend when we were a kid and our parents didn't like the kid or the family? And, oh no, you can't hang out with them. A lot of times it was because of the different values that our parents had with those other families. So morals are developed by society as a group. So there's a consensus. Everyone or the majority of everyone agrees. Values are more our personal perspectives. They're the things that we use to measure goodness and measure badness. This behavior is good and that's better. This behavior is bad and that's worse. All right, so we all come to a conclusion about what our ethics are based on different personal beliefs. And we acquire those personal beliefs a lot of different ways. Can anybody think of how you acquire your personal beliefs? Anyone have any idea? Feel free to type a comment if you can think of how you acquire them. Your parents, your family, your upbringing, religion, yep, friends, through faith, yep, you guys, that's exactly right. And there's a lot of different ways, but I think a lot of it's basically our life experiences, right? We are born, okay, into a family, and how the family views and handles things establishes or helps establish our values. If we're raised in an ethnic family where we follow years and years of tradition, or if we follow a religion, that helps shape us. Our friends, our older siblings, our relatives, we go to Little League or we play softball or go to gymnastics, all those people, and think about when you're a kid and you had a crush on somebody. And even if it was, you were a girl and there was an older girl or woman that you admired and you wanted to be like, or if you're a guy and you had a coach or, somebody and you wanted to be like them, they have a lot of influence with us. And one of the things, psychologically speaking, that we know about the influence of other people is that kids are the most susceptible to that in their middle teen years, all right, teenagers, early teens. And it doesn't matter if it's their friends or their parents, that's when they're most susceptible to it. But even deeper than that is what resonates with us tends to be what is really inherent to us inside. So, the nature versus nurture thing, how other people behave resonates with us if that's usually part of our nature. So yeah, the role models, okay, that we most admire are the ones we identify with, for whatever reason, and that's going to vary. So society has an influence. A lot of people think economic factors influence us, and I don't think that any one of these things alone makes us ethical or unethical, but they shape our worldview. They color the lenses through which we see the world, and we come up with our own moral compass. We come up with our values. Roxanne makes a good point. Nowadays, the media and video games, movies, actors, sports stars, right? All of those individuals have a tremendous capacity to influence us. And they always did. It's just that before technology, the way it is in the last 10 or 20 years, we had more hands-on influence rather than this distant influence that seems like it's right here. like people who have many, many friends on social media, but don't ever meet with anybody in person. And I'm talking about before the pandemic. It feels like friends, but it's not. So think about what the rules were for you. And I'm talking about your personal stuff because it's important to understand that, because that's what you bring with you to the insurance industry. So think about growing up. What were the rules? Did you have rules? How were they shaped? Was it just your parents who made the rules, or did other people? Did you not have rules? Did you have parents say, it's not what I do, don't do as I do as I say? Were they consistent with what they said and did? Is what they said and did, was it in line with society and other people that you know? Did you agree with them? Did you like it? How many of us said when we were 18 or 20 or 25, when I'm out on my own, I'm never going to do what my parents did. I'm not going to raise my kids that way. I'll never do that. The minute I moved out of my parents' house, I never ate white bread again. I mean, that's not ethics, but there are other things that I never said, did, or not. And I think we all, again, look at the examples and choose to follow them. And in the insurance industry, reputation is important. I think whenever you're dealing with especially sales and customer service, but more so sales, people have this idea that salespeople, when they sell, like walk around with a baseball bat behind their backs and they pressure you. And whenever you have the ability to influence someone, whenever you have more knowledge than they do, it's easier to acquire a bad reputation inadvertently. And so I think in the insurance industry, most people value reputation, but it has to be acquired. It has to be earned. It's not something that you're born with. If you build rapport with people and they trust you, you can build your reputation. So if you tell people, oh, I'll call you by the end of the day, and you don't, you're already chipping away at your reputation. You're already chipping away at the trust you're building, because you said you were going to do something and you didn't. And people not only think you didn't do what you said, but they feel like you broke your promise. You broke your word. And I think a lot of the insurance industry and what we do is feelings. People want to be important. And one of the things, if you've ever gone through any kind of sales training, is the under promise and over deliver. If you know that you can call somebody back by today, tell them you can call them back by tomorrow. And then if a fire happens and you can't call them back, you're not a liar. And if you do call them back, now you're a hero. And I don't see that as self-serving so much as I see it as looking out for everybody. You're making sure that you're doing what your customer wants. Most people don't mind if you don't get back to them tomorrow morning instead of today, at least not reasonable people. But again, you want to be a person of your word. And I think that is the key to your reputation, that you do what you say and you say what you're going to do, and that everything is consistent. There's a lot of other things about reputation, and it's going to be different for each one of us. But I think that is the basis of it. And when it comes to our personal opinions, they're personal. And one of the keys to ethical behavior is eliminating conflicts of interest and any appearance of a conflict of interest. And this can be one of the hardest things for any of us, is to take our personal opinions and our personal feelings and put them in a box and set them over here while we're at work. We all have our personal opinions, we all have our personal beliefs, but they don't matter at work, because we're not hired to work for ourselves. We're hired by clients or by insurance companies, or we're appointed by insurance companies to work on behalf of them and or the clients. We're not paid to do what we want to do. And I think that it's important to understand that. Now, it's equally as important to understand that thinking of ourselves comes first. It's a natural thing. Cavemen, thousands of years ago, if a caveman went off by himself, he wasn't going to survive. The herd instinct is part of who we are, and the survival instinct is part of who we are. So anything that threatens our survival is something that we pay attention to, and it's gonna, you know, stick up our little antenna. I'm thinking of My Favorite Martian. But you know, right now we don't live in the wild the way the cavemen did. We don't have to do everything on our own. We have a lot of help. So a lot of our instincts have been toned down. But you know, our mental well-being and our emotional well-being is a form of survival. So when that's threatened, right, we tend to pay attention to ourselves. So I understand you're having a conversation with somebody and you feel threatened in some way, or things aren't going the way they should. That is part of what plays a role in it. But we have to suppress that at work, okay? Especially if we're acting on behalf of somebody else. Now, having said that, you don't want to suppress the instincts that tell you, gee, that's bad, that's wrong, I shouldn't do that. So there's a lot of contradictions in our emotions, in the things that we say, in the things that we do. And I encounter this conflict of interest thing all the time. How many of you, raise your hand if you've ever sat on a nonprofit board and you've been a board member? All right, I don't know if your hand buttons are available, but if they're not, raise your hand anyway. I guess I'm not seeing them. But in any event, when you sit on a board, okay, a nonprofit board, you're not supposed to be sitting on multiple boards in the same industry, or in any way representing different organizations that have conflicting interests. And we're going to talk more about conflict of interests later, but think about that. We're hired on behalf of someone else. We're paid to perform services for the benefit of somebody else, not us. So just because we have an opinion doesn't mean that that needs to be injected. Thank you, Nancy. All right, so what happens when we behave unethically? Now, on your screen are just some things that I threw up. But, you know, if we break the law, which is violating insurance statute, you know, violating unfair trade practices or claim practices, right? You can see some actions on the screen, or some things I thought about that are either illegal or and they're all unethical. How do they affect you personally? And how do they affect the insurance industry as a whole? What happens if you backdate insurance coverage, or you don't report information that an applicant shares with you, or that when you submit an application or a claim form, you alter the information? What does that do? Why is it unethical to do these things? You know, I mean, I've heard one of the things that a lot of people don't realize is actually illegal in most states is if you're selling insurance to somebody and there is an endorsement or a rider that you add, if there's a charge for it, you have to break the charge out separately. You can't just sneak it in. You sneak in an endorsement or a rider that charges a fee and you don't disclose it to the customer. That's unethical. Why? I mean, if you feel that it's a good endorsement or rider, it's going to benefit them, they're going to get extra coverage and it's only $7. Why is it unethical? Yeah, it's dishonest, Sharita says. First of all, it's dishonest. Perhaps it's omission, but that doesn't make it dishonest. Okay. Let's see. Unethical behavior can influence others to act unethically. Well, and here you are, right? If you're doing something that's dishonest, you're setting an example for being dishonest, and it's going to make it that much easier for you to do it over and over again, right? And Mary points out too is, yeah, if you slip it in for $7, you're being paid a commission. So really, how can it be viewed that you're doing it for the client's benefit and you don't share that it's for the client's benefit? You know, that's one of the things with the conflict of interest and the compensation part of that conflict of interest that we deal with every day in the insurance industry. We get paid a percentage of every additional premium dollar. Therefore, when we do something, we have to make sure that we're focusing on the benefit to the client rather than the benefit to us. And if we don't tell the client how they benefited, what does it look like? There you go. Alexa says it creates a lack of trust. That's exactly right. All right. So once again, we can do things and we can justify them. And every single one of us justifies all kinds of behavior. But if we do something that we're not supposed to do and we justify it, the justification better be that it's making the client it's putting the client in a better position, and the client needs to know about it. So let's talk specifically now how ethics works in the insurance industry. All right, there's a few things that I want to share with you now. Mary Ellen and Julia have a handout for this webinar. So the PowerPoint slides are in the handout. You'll get that after the webinar. These links should be embedded in it. So I'm going to click some of these links to just show you, and we'll be going on different pages on the different internet pages. So if you have a screenshot function and you want to snap a picture of that, you can. Now we have, of course, the laws and rules, but some states actually build ethical codes into their insurance statutes. And I know Florida is one of those states. In the insurance courses that I develop and write, I'm reading insurance code all the time. But here, for example, is the code of ethics built into Florida insurance code. All right. So a lot of people don't realize that that following a particular code of ethics may be included in their state laws. Now, I'm not going to go through all the states that have it. First of all, I don't know all of them, but this is the one I'm most familiar with. But many states have ethical codes. I know that in Florida, for example, there's also a code of ethics built into the life and health. There's a section of code about life and health insurance, and also for public adjusters. I know there are other states that do it. We also see codes of ethics built into federal laws. If you go to the SEC website, the Securities and Exchange Commission, there is the Investment Advisor Code of Ethics. And in this section of law, there's a definition for advisor. All right, and it spells out what everybody needs to do. So if you're calling yourself an insurance advisor, all right, keep in mind that there are certain sections of law that actually define it. Hopefully what you're doing is in conformity with that. And then we have different examples here, and I'm not going to, well, I guess maybe I will. The National Alliance has certain standards. Yeah, actually I want to do, no, I guess that's not going to work. I guess I have to log in to do that. Sorry. I guess the same thing. Let's try this one and see if it'll take me. Yeah, it will. Good. No, I guess I have to open it. I apologize for that. But if you click these, I'm pretty sure the FINRA one. Yeah. Okay, you can go to these websites. And the important thing about reading these rules and these codes of ethics is that they all say the same things, but they use different words because they address different segments of the insurance industry. All right, if you're selling securities or you're selling auto insurance, there are different components, there are different transactions. It's different implications to the clients. But nonetheless, the intentions that we're supposed to comply with and the actual behavior, right, is very, very similar. Let's talk about legality and ethics, because many people think that if you behave legally, you're behaving ethically. And if you're behaving illegally, you're behaving unethically. And that's not true. For the most part, it is. But think about outside of the insurance industry first, and then we'll talk about the insurance industry. All the different laws we have that vary between the federal government and the state, or that are different from state to state. In Massachusetts, okay, marijuana is legal, okay, both the recreational and medical use. But if I drive 5 states over, it may not be. So how can something be legal in one place and not the other? And if we're going to say it's ethical, if it's legal, well, then why is it legal and ethical here, but it's not legal and ethical somewhere else? You know, you can think of assisted suicide, abortion, vaccine mandates. We can go on and on about all different kinds of things in our society that aren't legally the same, depending upon where your body is physically. Well, the same thing applies in the insurance industry. Most of the states outlaw rebating, sharing your commission with someone who's not licensed, or giving gifts in order to induce someone to buy insurance. Well, there are some states that allow it within certain limits. Well, why is it illegal in some states and not in others? And why are the limits different? You know, one state might limit it to 25 a person, another one might limit it to 100. Why are there different continuing education requirements? You know, we have the continuing education requirements to make sure that insurance agents and brokers and producers and whoever else have a certain standard of knowledge and training and have that on an ongoing basis because we feel that we need to serve the public that way. That's ethical. Well, how come Massachusetts requires 45 hours every 3 hours and another state is 24 hours every 2 years? You know, is one more or less ethical? So again, doing the absolutes or the black and white, and if it's this way, it's right, and every other way is wrong, can get us into trouble. And that's why there are challenges, because there are different opinions. And I know I'm asking a lot of questions here, and I'm not giving you a lot of answers. That's part of what ethics is each one of us has to figure out the answers for ourselves and for every situation. Now, again, I'm not saying that you should steal. All right, and steal your client's money. I'm not saying, okay, you have to think about whether or not you take your client's premium dollars. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about it in the greater sense. Okay, because we want to make sure that we're being good. We want to make sure that we're being fair, that we're not being discriminatory. We want to do the right thing, right? You want to have a good reputation. And you want to make sure that you sell insurance to people and that they're happy with the services and that they don't suffer financial catastrophe, which would happen if they didn't have insurance. So how do you figure out what way to do it? How do you figure out what to focus on? Do you focus on just being a good girl and doing what you're supposed to do and following the rules? Or do you focus on goals? You know, it's the typical conundrum of being and doing, right? Is it who I am that matters, or is it what I do that matters? Ethics focuses on actual acts, but they also focus on intentions. All right, because intentions are the key to the primary ethical philosophy that we see in the insurance industry. And when we look at ethics, again, we can look at black and white morality, or we can look at situational or gray reality. So if we're looking at black and white, this is the law. Something is right and something is wrong, or one thing is right and everything else is wrong, or one thing is wrong and everything else is right. It's not relative to anything. There's no comparisons made. It's an absolute. This is the fact and that's it. And when it comes to situational ethics, there's a whole lot of shades of gray. All right. And the shades of gray say, all right, well, it's not good to kill. All right. Let's use that. Okay. Because that's a law. You're not allowed to murder someone. Right. And so in black and white ethics, you can't kill somebody. If you do, you go to jail. However, under situational ethics, what if you're defending yourself? What if you're fighting in a war and you're defending the country? Now, some people are going to say, no, that's not good. Killing is killing and that's it. You know, so for every law you have, you're going to have people who say, well, we shouldn't have that law. We don't need that law. But if you're working within the insurance industry and the laws are the laws, you kind of have to comply with them to exist in the insurance industry in a way that works for everybody. Just like in society, you can't go around killing people and live in society. There's consequences for that. There are results. All right. So when we're thinking of the black and white ethics or the absolutes, there's different perspectives. And I'm not going to delve into tons of philosophies for you, but what you're seeing on this slide, they're different ethical philosophies. And if you studied them and you research them, you'd understand that. So I'm briefly going to talk about the two that I see more in the insurance industry. And I believe that the insurance industry is founded on the principle of the golden rule. All right. And again, if you click the links, you can find online little articles that I found that explain them in more detail. All right. So the golden rule is treating people the way you want to be treated, because who wants to be treated badly, right? Whether you're a CEO at an insurance company or the CEO of a drug cartel. All right. You don't want to be treated poorly. You don't want your employees to steal from you. You want to have the best business that you can have. You want people you can trust. You want a good reputation. Now, yeah, the CEO of a drug cartel and the CEO of an insurance company are completely different. One of them operates within the law, one of them operates outside the law. But do you think they don't both have ethical codes? Everyone has an ethical code. It's just that some of them are not accepted. There's not a lot of consensus in the world. And I think what's important is that one sticks with the ethical code. Now, clearly in the insurance industry, all right, we're working with CEOs of insurance companies and not CEOs of drug cartels. So the golden rule says that you treat people the way you want to be treated. And under the golden rule, you don't sell a product that is against the law to people that you're going to harm. All right. And that's the consensus in our society today. Now, another ethical theory is the ends justifies the means. All right. And instead of thinking about treating people fairly, it focuses on goals. And everyone wants to achieve a goal. You know, a CEO of an insurance company and a CEO of a drug cartel both want to earn money. Maybe they want to have power and influence. Maybe they want to go to Bermuda on vacation 7 times a year. I don't know. But the ends justifies the means is a philosophy that says, so long as your goal is good, what you want to do is good. So in the insurance industry, selling insurance, it benefits people. It benefits the people who sell it. Therefore, that's a good thing. So it doesn't matter what you do or say or how you treat people, so long as you accomplish the goal. That is a true ethical philosophy. Right? So once again, we're now asking ourselves, what's more important? What we do and how we behave, or the consequences of what we do and how we behave? So if we look at the golden rule, it focuses on our intentions. We behave based on the intention to treat people well, to treat them fairly, to do the good thing, to do the right thing. And a lot of people mistakenly believe that it is a Christian principle and that's the only principle, but it isn't. Okay, thousands of years ago, Jewish scholars were talking about the intentions and the same workings of the golden rule. Confucius in the 6th and 5th centuries BC talked about it. Plato, Aristotle, and Seneca did. All right, so the golden rule has been an ethical philosophy carried through generations. And again, I believe that's what we follow in the insurance industry. It's all about doing the right thing. So if we all agree that selling insurance is beneficial, so long as we're honest and we're fair and we treat our clients or potential clients the way we'd want to be treated, if we sell a policy and 3 years later it doesn't pay the claim, our behavior isn't going to be judged as ethical or unethical based on the claim denial. It's going to be judged based on how we behaved when we sold it and how we've been servicing it, how we've been treating the person, what we intended. We didn't intend to harm the person. In fact, we intended to help the person and have them benefit from the transaction. And you notice there's nothing about the I in this. If I'm trying to help somebody and benefit them, it's about them. It's not about me. And that's the concept of the golden rule. Now, when it comes to the ends justifies the means, actually, how many of you have heard of Machiavelli? And I may be saying his name right, okay? But he was an author, historian, and philosopher born in 1469, and he was widely criticized for his belief that deceit, treachery, and criminal conduct were necessary components of successful leadership, especially in politics. All right, so the ends justifies the means says you got to focus on happiness. You got to focus on goals. And, you know, so long as your happiness, which is, I mean, isn't it good that you're happy, that people are happy? That's a good thing. And so long as your goal is good, it doesn't matter what you do to get there. All right. And he had 3 different ways of looking at this. All right. And one of them is if the greater good is served, the majority of the people are served, then whatever you do to accomplish whatever it is for the greater good is ethical. Doesn't matter if you have to hurt some people because you're focusing on the majority of people. All right. So that's one way to look at your action. And then the other one is to look at altruistically. All right. Let me see. There's a story here I wanted to tell you first, though. Where is it? Let me look at my notes. Give me a second. Here's an example of it. All right. The Ford Pinto. Can you remember the Ford Pinto? All right. The decision that Ford made not to change the gasoline tank. Let me see what it is. There was people were paying more money if they were going to fix the problem with the location of the gas tank. And so Ford looked at all different options, and they ultimately decided, and here's the numbers. All right. Only a few people would die, be seriously burned, or suffer the loss of a vehicle. Okay. And the actual math said that 12.5 million cars versus an estimated 180 deaths, 180 serious burns, or 2,100 total fire losses. All right. So the math said that manufacturing the car without the gas tank fix would cost 49 million. And the fix would cost 12.5 million. Would cost 12.5 million car owners $137 million in additional costs associated with redesign and insurance and all kinds of stuff. So they basically looked at the math and said, yeah, we're going to lose a few people. Some people are going to be burned and lose their cars, but the costs associated with that are less than doing this. So that's what we're going to do. That's altruism, okay? And in terms of the ends justifies the means. All right. And then you have egoism, right? And egoism is where only select people benefit. So egoism is, it's all about me. Okay. If the behavior makes that select person or persons happy, doesn't matter what you do. And what I see in the insurance industry, when people have violated the law or they've behaved unethically, almost always the justification is that, well, gee, everybody, more people are gonna benefit from it, or more people are going to benefit than they are going to be hurt, or it's all about me, or it's all about one person. There was an article I read in the newspaper, not in the newspaper, online a couple of years ago, when I was doing researching an insurance fraud course I was writing, and there was a bank in the UK. And there was a female vice president, and she was arrested for embezzlement. Now, she was in charge of the bank's compliance with anti-money laundering statutes. So she embezzled, I don't know, the equivalent of like $2 million. And when she was asked why she did it, her answer was, well, I guess I felt entitled to it. All the other male VPs made more money than me. And if I'd worked at another bank, I would have earned more money. All right, there's your egoism. All right, to my way of thinking, if you took the job and accepted the salary, you know, that's what it is. If you felt the salary wasn't fair, why did you take the job? You know, if you could have been making that money going somewhere else, why didn't you go somewhere else? There's a whole lot of different ways to look at it, but you don't steal, not in the insurance industry, according to the ethics that the insurance industry embraces, okay, because of these three reasons. And someone can be ethical and legal and have a great reputation and follow the rules all the time until they don't. And when they don't, this is almost always the justification. So how do we understand the difference? How do we differentiate? Do we follow the golden rule all the time? Or do we pick and choose when we're going to follow it? And that's what some people do. Some people follow the ends justifies the means all the time. And there's a buzzword for those people. It's narcissist, right? Isn't that a buzzword now in society? People who frame everything in terms of themselves. So we need to think about it. We need to think about every single day that we go to work. We're working for other people. We're not working for ourselves. We're working to put people in a better position all the time. We're not working to put them in the position we think they should be in, right? And we are working for other people. And this is where, again, we need to focus on our own interests. And on your screen here are 3 different definitions of conflict of interest, because of course, there are different situations, all right? And essentially, in the insurance industry, we are hired for the benefit of other people. Insurance companies appoint us, or clients hire us as a broker to advise them about what insurance products to buy, to sell, to collect premiums, to assist in all different ways. And we're supposed to do it with their best interests in mind. And a conflict of interest arises when anything happens to prevent us from doing that. All right. Yes, Sharita says we're dealing with people's life savings in some situations. Yes, we are. And we don't know everything about our clients, so how can we judge what's in their best interest and what isn't? So let's talk about some things that are actual conflicts of interest in the insurance industry. Insider trading is you have information and then you exploit it for your own good. If we see this, I know people sit on boards and they have information about what's going to happen with the company. Or people sit on a committee and they know what's going to happen. You have advance notice. You're privileged to have information, and then you exploit it. You use it for yourself. That's a conflict of interest. Typically, what everybody's concerned about is that we sell based on commission. Gee, Linda, you represent 4 different companies and they pay 4 different commission levels. There are going to be people who believe that if I happen to sell a policy with the company that pays the highest commission rate, I'm doing it for myself. Now, I believe most of us in the insurance industry, when we represent multiple carriers, don't stop and think, oh, that company pays a higher commission, because you and I both know I can sit down and do 4 illustrations, whether it's life insurance or commercial general liability or auto insurance. And even though this company's rates are typically higher or lower, for any given individual, when I do the illustration, they may or may not be the most competitive. Right? Do you guys agree with that? And, you sell a policy and it's $50 or $100 more. How much more money are we going to make on that? I think the majority of us don't do it. I'm sure some people do too, but most of us don't. But that's a concern, and it should be a concern. But just because we can sell based on commission doesn't mean we will. Just like because we have inside information doesn't mean we're going to act on it. But when we do, that's actual conflicts of interest. If I am an insurance adjuster, or I am, I don't know, an insurance agent, and I have ownership interest in a repair shop or in a paramedical company, referring people to those companies is a conflict of interest. Now, perhaps acknowledging upfront my ownership interest and saying you can go to my company or any of these, now you're being transparent with it. But again, that's the appearance of a conflict of interest or a potential. How about I work at an insurance company and I have 3 applicants for a job, and my son is one of the applicants. If I hire my son, are there people who are going to believe there's a conflict of interest there? Yeah, maybe there is, maybe there isn't. Maybe my son was the most qualified. Maybe he wasn't. Maybe I think he was the most qualified and somebody else wouldn't. So we want to make sure when it comes to these conflicts of interest that we, or potential conflicts of interest, that we know they're there, that we understand where our personal interests lie. And we need to put our personal interests in a box and set it aside. When it comes to gifts and loans and entertainment, are they viewed as an inducement? I'm taking you out to dinner, so you will buy a policy from me. Or I promised it to you, and now that you have bought insurance from me, I am taking you out to dinner. Captive insurance companies, that's why they don't allow their agents to sell insurance for other companies, because they view that as a potential conflict of interest. There might be other activities you could be doing, other jobs that you could have, working at a bank perhaps on a part-time basis, that may influence an insurance company into thinking that perhaps all of your attention isn't focused on their behalf. So here is a list of things, and they're generic, okay? But it's a guide to help you figure out how conflicts of interest arise. And if you find yourself in a situation where this comes about, okay, you have the potential of benefiting from a situation. You have the potential to help someone else benefit from it. Again, you don't put your personal feelings aside. You don't even recognize that you have personal interest. And I think this is one that I see a lot. People don't even realize that they sit on this particular board of directors, all right, for one company, and it conflicts with their employment at another company. You know, I mean, I can think of a woman who's a writer who sits on the board of directors for one writers organization, but she is an editor at a publishing house. However, every year they have an anthology of stories and she gets to choose the people who go in it. Well, there are going to be people from her writers organizations and others submitting. I see that as a conflict of interest. I don't think she should be the one choosing whose stories go in. So we see that with insurance. You know, let's say you're an adjuster, you work for an insurance company and you're an adjuster, and then you happen to sit on the board or you have ownership in a body repair shop or a glass shop. Those are the kinds of things. So we need to understand what a conflict of is and recognize the line between our interests and someone else. And if we can't do that, we need help to do that. Because I think with ethics, that's probably the biggest part of it. Someone asks us to backdate insurance or to hold on to a check, even though there's no funds in the bank, you know, and if you sent the money in and the check bounced, their insurance is going to cancel. But if you hold on to it for a few days, by the time they get it, the money will be there. What's the ethics involved in there? Who does it benefit? Is it honest? These are the kinds of things we need to ask ourselves. And that's it for me. If there's any questions, any comments, I'm happy to take them. Any questions or comments? Thank you, Tammy. There you are, Julia.
I'm back on.
Okay, so no questions. I'm just seeing some nice comments. Thank you very much.
It was really a great seminar, Linda. Thank you so much for
You're welcome.
Joining us today and being willing to do this webinar on ethics. And I have to say, it's one of the best, if not the best, ethics webinar I have seen in quite a while. It really was enjoyable. I'm very grateful for you joining us this month.
Happy to do it. You know, there's always different ways, different perspectives to look at everything. And I think a lot of times we talk about it specifically, but sometimes if we think about areas that we don't normally think about, they get us, I don't know, how many times has somebody said something to you? Or for me, let me put it to me. I've had someone tell me something and I didn't get it. And someone told me the same thing and I didn't get it. And then someone else said, and it's like, oh, I get it. So I think if we can look at things from a different perspective, sometimes it makes more sense.
I agree. I absolutely agree.
Thank you for all the comments. I really appreciate them. You guys are too kind.
It was really good. And we have your, I want to know if we can have your email information, your website address.
Feel free to reach out to me on my website. Okay, if you go to my website at lindamchenry.com, there's a contact form there. I do respond to inquiries personally, so feel free to reach me there. I appreciate that. And I guess as far as I'm concerned, we're all set. If you guys have any other questions, or Julie, if there's anything you want to do.
Well, I think I'm going to, first of all, let everyone know that if you want a link to a copy of this PowerPoint, it will be available next week. And so be sure to look for your exit webinar survey that will be coming to you. And I want to thank everyone for your continued support. And once again, thank you, Linda, for sharing your expertise. This really was a fantastic webinar.
I'm glad you enjoyed it.
I did. Usually I work while these are going on. I didn't today.
Well, and I want everybody to know that the opening slide had the little shamrocks there because Mary Ellen was thrilled that this was St. Patrick's Day. So I did the flower theme because it's the only thing I could think of that went along with the shamrocks for her.
It was great. It was really great. We will make sure that everyone has access to the webinar, to the PowerPoint, if you are interested. As a reminder to all The SILA Foundation brings these webinars free of charge, mainly through donations, and we try to get sponsors for all of our webinars, but don't feel like you have to sponsor or donate to SILA, to the SILA Foundation. Just letting your friends know, letting other people in the industry know about these webinars, because they are free and open to the public, not just SILA members. But if you can, and your company can donate, we'll happy take those as well. I don't think, if there are no more questions, I think that's it. I don't have anything else to share except just to thank everyone for joining us today. And I look forward to seeing all of you next month during the webinar. And again, Linda, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Glad to be here.
Goodbye, everybody. Thank you for joining us.
Bye-bye.